Standing 8 is brought to you by Elite Home Improvements. EHI Australia is the home of Amplimass security screen products. Feel safe at home.
Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Standing 8. I'm Paul Fitzgerald and I'm joined by my co-host, three-time world champion and Boxing Hall of Famer Jeff Fennick.
Thank you, Paul.
And the voice of Australian boxing, Ben Damon.
Thank you very much, Paul. And we've got a special guest here today as well in Graham Abbo Henry, I guess a notorious underworld figure. You don't mind us calling you that?
That's what it is.
Yeah. No point sugarcoating it.
Yeah, that's right.
Your nickname's Abbo, probably not a palatable nickname at this day and age. For you...
We're changing to Graham Aboriginal Henry.
Okay. Yeah.
Maddie Rose...
Or Curry.
Just Aboriginal, Jeff, not Abbo, Aboriginal. So respect to you, Maddie.
But fascinating that you found out you're in fact of Indigenous heritage at the age of 68.
Yeah,
what was that process like for you, particularly given that you've been known as Abbo all your life?
Yeah, it was quite funny, really. I mean, I was nicknamed that at the age of about 14. They called me Sambo first off. I wasn't very happy with the nickname Sambo, so it was like I wanted to shine their shoes or something. So I said, mate, pull up on that. So anyway, it ended up Abbo, and, I had the skinny legs, the flat nose, the dark skin, and I just ran with it. But it's funny, I always felt that I was never really part of the family. I looked a little bit different. They all had pointy noses and, but, I just ran along with it all my life. All my Aboriginal friends that I knew and grew up with over the years through Redfern and all of those louts around there, they always said to me, we can't believe that you don't know you're Aboriginal. We know you are, But then when my sister died about 4 or 5 years ago, she told me the secret on a deathbed. And since then I've joined with the Wabakal people up there at around the Newcastle area, Lake Macquarie. And they've become very good friends of mine, actually. But it's good to know me heritage, but, I don't get involved in all the politics of it.
You said you didn't really feel like part of the family. That was made pretty clear to you from what I've heard about your story by your father. Do you think that had a lot to do with it?
Well, I think that my father, when I look back now, I mean, I used to hate my father. But as I grew older, I realised, the man came home from fighting 4 or 5 years at the war in Syria in the Middle East against the Germans, and then he was injured in the war, and then he was hooked on painkillers. When he came home, he went to knock on his first wife's door, and another man answered the door. So he left that family, and then he met my mother and married her. I mean, my mother only had one leg. She lost it at the age of 10. It was cut off way above her knee up here. And, but he was absolutely brutal to her. I don't mean he slapped her and threw her up against the wall or choked her. He punched her like a prize fighter would punch another fighter, So, he took the wind out of me as a young bloke, I think, and I think I was a little bit insecure because of it, as I grew up. And it took me until I was about 20, I think, to really regain myself.
Well, he tried to kill you, didn't he?
He tried to kill me with a garden mattock when I was about 15 or 16 years of age, and I won this thing at an amateur boxing tournament. I had a big tray. And that's all you'd win in those days, a tray or a tie pin or a tie, St George League slab or whatever it was you fought at, So I had this tray and had it on the bottom of the ground, and I used to put it on the bottom of the floor. And we also had a few burglars come to that house, so I always had it there for that reason as well. But there was a steel plectrum that my mother used to use for an Hawaiian guitar. You slide it up and down, gives that a Hawaiian sound. So I used to put it on the door handle. And this night he was driving us mad with his mouth organ and he'd already abused me mother and carried on like a pork chop. So I told him to shove it up his backside, and I shut the door. Anyway, I seen him walk out the hallway as I was shutting it. And he just gave me the filthiest look. And for some reason, this awareness I've always had in me, I put this tray down on the floor and put the steel thing up on the door and it moved about that far before it fell, Well, it hit the floor and then next minute I just looked up and seen him coming at me, so I rolled out of the bed. When I looked back, I just knew he'd done something, so I hightailed it out of the bed. I was terrified of him. And it wasn't long after that I came home and I found blood all through the kitchen, like I'm talking in clots, lumps of it. And I'm screaming out to my mother, "Where are you, Mum? Where are you?" And she didn't want to answer me, because she knew I'd blow up. So she was under the house, hiding under the house. And I was sort of in and out of the house because I lived on the streets most of the time to get away from the violence, But I ended up running in and finding her under the house. As I said, she only had one leg, but she was a tough lady, She had plenty of go in her. So I just lost it and ran up the stairs, and they slept in different bedrooms. So he jammed up he must have known I was going to come home, or I don't know what it was, but he jammed up the room for some reason so he couldn't get in. So I smashed the door in and pulled him out of the bed, punched the living daylights out of him, and then I ran up the hallway, come back with a barbecue fork and stuck the barbecue fork in his chest, his neck, everywhere. My mother stopped me. Like I was a bit shocked about it. I thought, what'd you stop me for? I should have killed the bastard. He'd been bashing you all your life, And he never gave me up. He never said nothing. I broke his jaw and all his ribs and fixed up his holes. Anyway, he come home a few days later from the Ryde Hospital and he had all his war medals up on the table, and there was a note with it, and it said, take one of these for every bone you broke in my body. So I just ran in the room, picked them at him and shoved them at him.
There weren't enough medals there.
I said, you didn't deserve them, mate. Which was a shit thing to say, but of course he deserved it, But not for what he did to her, he treated her terrible. But as I say, he went through plenty. He come up hard, and that's how it was. And it was the first hatred I had towards the police, because they used to come to the house and, someone would ring up, the neighbours or something like that, and they'd say, look, mate, they'd pull him outside and they'd say, just keep the noise down. You know what I mean? My mother would be in there covered in blood. And so, that was my first hatred towards them. I thought.
Anyway, let's get down to talking about the Graham Abbo Henry we all want to know. The one that had the green light, had an amazing association with Arthur Neddy Smith. How was it?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what I think I'm more known for than all of that. I think, look, I met Neddy Smith in Parramatta Jail in 1973. He was a towering of a man. He was about 6'6", massive shoulders on him, very fit. Had a very big reputation that he could, fight like this thrashing machine, and which I found out later was, not really up to his standard. But he could. He was a very tough bloke, and
I remember shaking his hands a couple of times. It's about another fist of mine. He had hands, massive hands, crazily big.
Yeah,
He's a big man.
Very big in it, man. But he used to sort of punch funny. He'd sort of punch short, and he wasn't. I wouldn't what I'd call a powerful fighter, But a bloke called Billy Harrison who's fought, and a very tough bloke, gets out there at the Billy Tracy's mate and all them. He actually taught Ned how to hold his hands up, and look, I met him in there, and then I was released in 1976, and I ran into him at the Governor Burke Hotel, and he'd just been pinched on an armed robbery and was out on bail, and his mate was locked up. I thought that was a bit strange. His mate's name was Robert Chapman, and a very tough bloke too. So I started to ask around a few things, and everyone said, he's telling on people. He's informing to the police. He's given evidence, and the other bloke's locked up. And, I found it a little bit hard to believe because he was such a big, strong sort of
So
bloke.
way back at the start?
Yeah, way back then, mate.
Wow.
1976. So that's his first contact with the police, really, and then he did business with them. Detective Roger Rogerson arrested him at the police station when he went to report one night, which they showed on Blue Murder. And he procured him from there on in, him and Ned became very close, and he always turned up wherever Ned was. Well, being a young bloke that I was, coming from the streets and running my own like gangs and, and running around on the streets and being a sharpie and all that sort of nonsense, coming from that sort of background that I come from, and we all stuck together like glue, and loyalty was everything to me, your principles and your loyalty are everything. It's all you got. It's your street cred and it's your, And I remember just thinking, no, it can't be right about him, So anyway, I started running with him, and then we even went around that night trying to raise bail for him. But when I look back now, I can see it was all just part of the ploy, But, anyway, we became good friends. And as I said to him, I said, look, your enemies aren't my enemies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you've got enemies, Bobby's your enemy, then his friends, that doesn't mean they're mine. You know what I mean?
Was he good with that?
No, he wasn't happy with that at all. But as we progressed and then he said to me, look, the police have helped me out here and I can virtually do what I want to do. Now, this is long before 1983 when he took Warren Land Frenchie down Dangar Place and he was shot dead. So he was pretty sweet with them then, mate. You know what I mean? So he said, I can do anything I like. I said, well, if you can do anything you like, I'll put a team together and we'll do it. You just get the protection. I'll organise the crimes. That's what I do. I'm good at it.
Yeah. And the bulk of those were...
some people are plumbers and drainers and workers. I was good at what I did.
And the bulk of those were payroll robberies?
Yeah, robberies, payroll robberies in those days, and then it progressed to armoured trucks and then, all sorts of things,
So
But
you were pretty much the brains behind those.
well, I was the organiser.
Organiser.
I was the one who did all the homework, and
Yep.
his job was to just get the police on side. And then when we started to do that, then we started mingling with other gangs like Michael Hurley's gang, who were a band of thieves. They weren't gangsters; they were professional thieves, and they were the best of the best. Some of the old team members were even part of the old Kangaroo gang that he got around with. They was old safe blowers, but then then drugs come into it, and they became a different team altogether. They started importing drugs, and in the end went to jail for it, and then he died, and his mate, unfortunately, Leslie Mara, got 13 years for it.
Leslie, great rugby league player.
Yeah. Great rugby league player.
And a great guy. I've known Les since I was a young boy, and I didn't think that he was ever involved in any of that stuff. We don't know all that stuff, and you can be guilty by association. But as a human, Les is an amazing man. Yes.
Yes.
Great man.
100%. Love him to death. Solid as a rock.
Very well.
With regards to Neddy Smith, when did it really start to turn sour between the pair of you? And was that inevitable, do you think? Is that sort of the case when...
Well, I just think he was just a bit jealous by nature, Ned, and I guess when there was just him and me running around and a few other people here and there that we'd get around with, we were as,
thick as thieves.
Thick as thieves, exactly
Fittingly.
right, And we did everything together. I'd back my back against his back and we'd fight all comers, and we did everything all the time together, everything.
Graham, you told me a great story one day that you were in a room where Dale Christopher Flannery was, and you walked in and Neddy was there, and Neddy just about walked out and left you there. Can you tell us that story?
Oh, that was the day of the units. That's when they were trying to plan to kill me. That was... that sort of gets into a long story where that really came from the shooting of Michael Drury, and they needed someone to fall for it, and they put a little plan together, everyone who was involved in the conspiracy to murder Detective Drury, and they said, well, why don't we get rid of Abbo? That was Christopher Dale Flannery's wife and Flannery and Neddy Smith, and a detective called Detective John Anderson, who's now deceased. I don't know the other copper who was there, but I know even if you watch Roger Rogerson, he's got a DVD called The Life and Times of Roger Rogerson. He says on that, I sent Detective Anderson down to Flannery's place to talk to him about getting someone to fall for the gangland murders and the shooting of Michael Drury. So I was going to be the scapegoat. Now, I know that that's true because someone who was there told me straight after it. And so I went down to the safe to get me money out of a safe that I had in the hotel, the Star Hotel at Alexandria. Used to keep a lot of money there, and we keep guns and all sorts of things in there. And I went in there and I said to old Joe, the barman, I said, mate, go and get me money out of the safe, will you? He said, oh, someone picked it up yesterday, mate, you know. And I said, well, what do you mean someone picked it up? He said, Ned sent down, you know, this bloke, Fingers, who was one of the blokes in the gang. And I said, oh, did he? He said, yeah, he said he told us to pick it up. I said, well, right, I'm going up to see him. So I marched on up the back. So I thought, I won't go around the front of his place. I'll go up the back stairs to his girlfriend's place in Pitt Street, who was Michelle. And I went around underneath. And as I was walking underneath, it was pitch black under the garage. And I remember looking at this utility that was there, and I said, well, that's one of the gangs. And I said to myself, I've always had this awareness, you know, this psychic ability, and I just said, I'm going in that. I just knew straight away.
You had a feeling.
You know, so I had a gun down the back of my pants, and as I got up and I knocked on the door, come up the back way, knocked on the door, and Ned's girlfriend opened the doors and give me the eyes like this, you know, warning eyes. Well, I already knew, and I walked in, and it was Chris Flannery. He was sitting there. He had his arm right beside him with a pillow. Well, you know, I mightn't be the sharpest tool in the shed sometimes, you think, but I knew exactly what was going on. There's an old saying, you got to know how to read a room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you walk in, you watch the movement, you see. So all of a sudden, Ned and 3 blokes in my gang all took off out the door. Well, I knew that Ned's girlfriend would never let just anyone be in the flat, you know, on their own.
Yeah.
She was real fastidious and tidy. And so next minute she said, I'm going too. So I walked out in the kitchen where she was. She said, look out, you know, like that. And I said, all right. So I walked back down, and as I walked around the front of him, I said, where'd your big mate go? He said, how would I fucking know? Well, by the time he started talking with his hand, I pounced on him, you know. Then I just pulled my gun out and stuck it in his head, and I said, what's going on, you effing dogs? And, you know, went right off my head. Next minute there's a knock on the door. And here I am on top of him on the lounge. Well, he was gone. He was dead, you know. And next minute the door opened, and this girlfriend came in of the girl who owned the flat, and she just went, fuck. So I couldn't do anything then. Otherwise I would have had to have shot her, and I don't go around shooting women. So I had to walk out of the flat. So that was just one of the attempts. There was 4 attempts by that gang. All over, I've had 20 attempts on my life.
Wow.
Up until 2006, when I wrote my book, A Treacherous Life, I'd had 14, and I had 6 after that.
Wow.
They got that bad that they got the Mark Standen, who's now serving time, who was with the assistant commissioner with the Crime Commission. He got with the informer who was trying to murder me, who I called the clone in my book. And he got with him, and they in turn tried to knock me off. So in the end, they couldn't get me. They couldn't understand how they couldn't get me, but I just kept getting them all the time, you know, trapping them. And then I started to chase them, and then they sent Rogerson to see me. And they said, well, we're waving the white flag. He said, we're even. You know, you had a go at me. I chased him through Moore Park with a shotgun, and he said, we're even. I said, we're not fucking even. We'll be even when it's over, mate. You know, so that was the end of that. So next minute they got a massive big team together when he got the green light off Mark Standen, and he got a massive team of 10 people to come to my house Thursday night before Good Friday 2004 it was. 10 of them came to my house.
Turned out to be a good Friday for you, a bad one for them.
Yeah. Well, you know, it could have been a a bad night all round, I'll tell you. But I saw him, so I just walked straight out the front of the house, and there was no light out at the front of my house. And my wife was out in my Mercedes at the time, and it was bulletproof, my car, you know. She was out in the car, and it was a Thursday night, and they probably thought, well, he's out. Well, wait, as soon as the car comes in the driveway, we'll run in and we'll get him in the driveway. So I'm sure that was their plan, because they were all planted all around the houses all around me. So as I got there, I said to my daughter, I said, look, come up here. So I got up, and I had a double-storey house, and it had one of those big windows that sort of go out on like a little spare room. And I said, look, I want you to go downstairs and just get me cricket bag. I said, your cricket bag? I said, yeah, go get my cricket bag. So she run downstairs, comes out with, what's in that, Dad? And I undone it.
Going to put your pads on.
Come the bag. In went all the magazines, and the guns are all over the bed. And I said, you just sit down in the corner there. She went, oh, Dad, I'm horrified. You know? And I said, just sit in the corner. And I said, if they come into the house, then they're gone. If they come in the front yard, they're gone, you know. So I got up the top and waited. Anyway, I pulled off a little trick. I won't say what I did, because otherwise, you know, they'll know what I did. But
Yeah.
In the end, they just took off, you know. But that was the last attempt I had, you know. But the thing that made me laugh, I think, the guess, out of all the attempts that they've had on my life, and, you know, I've been shot in the leg, I've been shot in the head by the police, I've been stabbed, I've been, you know, all the attempts that I've had on my life, I'm still breathing, and it cost them a fortune to get rid of me, and I'm still here.
The last man standing.
Graham, you've described yourself as a seer. You have a belief in this sort of, the supernatural almost, and your ability to see into the future or get signs from the future. Where do you think?
I got that. I got that off my mother's side, and my younger daughter has it also.
Is that what's kept you alive, you think?
Oh, 100%. You know, it's just it's an awareness with me, but I got more than awareness. I mean, I've seen... Look, mate, if I told you some of the things that happened in my life over things like that, people would sit there and go, oh, what a freaking liar. But look, mate, I've had one night when these people were hanging around me trying to get me everywhere I walked, they'd try and follow me. And then I'd change it, you know, 3 days later and go another way and throw them out of gear. So, you know, they could never get me set. So... And I was always armed up, and anyway, I was sitting in the house there this night, and I had this little Jack Russell dog, and he started going around the light with his barking up in the light, like a lunatic, like chasing something around in a circle. And straight away I got up, because I know, and I said, that's a warning. I said, yous all stay in there. I went out the front, and I was standing there, and a bloke had come to visit me. He came out with me. I said, look, just do me a favour, go in the house and go and get me gun. He said, all right. So he ran in the house and come out. And as he come out, I pulled a Holden Commodore, and two blokes got out, pulled on the balaclavas. Well, one bloke actually got out, the other bloke stayed in the car. And so I squatted down behind this tree, and I said, I'll wait till they come right up to me, and I'll just pounce them straight out the front of the house, right? So as I'm sitting there, out comes my dog and runs between my legs. So I pulled him by the back of the legs and pulled him back in to me, you know. Well, they saw me. They saw me do it, you know. So next minute they jump out the car, so I just emptied it into the car. Well, as he went down the hill, he went over a little embankment on the front. There was a house that was down a lower level, and he went over it, and he scarred the skid, and I thought, I've got him. And I'm bolting down the hill to get him, and then he just caught traction and got out of the place, you know. But, you know, you could see all the neighbours driving past my house all the time, looking, going, a lot of noise comes out of that house.
Wow.
You know.
Graham, one of the defining moments in your life was 1988, Malcolm Spence, the Lord Wolseley Hotel.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it was I'd been out, it was just before Christmas, and I was gone out with a couple of police that I had on side with my gang. That all I ever did was pay. I never ever give them information, only ever paid them money. I went and had lunch with them, and at the Epping Hotel, actually. And as I was there, they said to me, oh, look, Malcolm's been running around shooting. Malcolm run around, he was part of the whole organised crime network that we had. Now, when I talk about organised crime, I'll just go off the subject just for a sec. When you talk about organised crime, like people talk about today, there's no organised crime today. There's people that organise crimes, but to have organised crime, you've got to have police, prosecutors, magistrates, judges. That's a whole network of them. It's like a giant octopus,
Yeah.
And that's what we had. The McPherson gang had it. Mickle's gang had it. No other gang in Australia's ever had it. Ever. Where we could commit every crime, go on and get away with it.
Yeah.
Didn't mean we had all the police on site, but we could always get out of trouble somehow. Lessen the sentence. We had ministers from politicians on side.
Yeah.
Some people had the Premier of the state on side.
Yeah.
No, that's corruption. That's organised crime. Now they've got the poor bikies running around and they've put them on the organised crime gangs and, there's probably 15 of them that run around doing things and, the rest just want to be bikies.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, they're the blokes, and then you had the Middle Eastern crime run around with Murdoch written all over them and, advertising who they were and the Brothers for Life and the, no one had names.
Yeah.
We were just who we were and we did what we did and, but then, it just started changing. They started spraying up houses and carrying on. And,
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to Malcolm Spence. Malcolm actually ran around and someone had written a letter to the Internal Affairs Police and said that he was driving a stolen Mercedes that was supplied to him by the Mickle Hurley gang. And because they had control over the wharves and this car had come off there, well, the car was too old to have come off the wharves. It wasn't a brand new Mercedes or anything. It was just an older style.
Yeah.
So, that was a rumour going around. So he went on a fishing expedition trying to find out who it was. So being half pissed down the Captain Cook Hotel one afternoon, he said, I want to have a word with you. So he said, we'll go over the pub at Pyrmont. So we went over the Pacific Hotel at Pyrmont. I drove him up. And when he got there, he said, you give me up to the Internal Affairs Police. And he took his teeth out of his head. I said, the first mistake you've done, mate,
Yeah.
put them back in your mouth or I bust your jaw. I said, and I'll tell you now, I'll bust your jaw. Right? No, I said, that's the lowest thing anyone's ever said to me. 100% I've never been a dog in my life. And I said, so a dog meaning a police informer. And I said, so I would never ever do that against you. I said, so I'm going to leave you with it while you're pissed. I said, have a think about it over the night. If you still want to carry on with tomorrow, well, I'll see you tomorrow. So anyway, nothing was said for a couple of weeks. And then I went to this turnout and the copper said, keep away from him, And I said, I heard he's been running around saying that I shit myself when he had put it on me, in the pub. And I said, so I brooded on it, and then I thought, no one calls me that and gets away with it. So I thought, I'll go and teach him a lesson. So I drove down past the Lord Wolseley Hotel and here he is, with all his mates. And so I walked in and said, come outside, I want to have a talk to you. He said, I'm not talking shop tonight. I said, well, you will be tonight. Come on, outside. So I walked outside and the silly goose followed me. He walked out in the laneway. There was not a light inside. I just went bang, hit him with a left hook and dropped him, right? So I didn't hit him as hard as I wanted to. I just hit him enough so he'd get up and have a go. That's all I wanted him to do, have a go at me. And he said, I'm sorry about all that stuff. I was wrong and, started doing a sook and I just lost it then.
Yeah.
And then out come the air conditioner out of my pocket and I put a hole in his stomach and a hole in his throat. And so I got 8 years for it. So he told the police that I actually went there to kill him on behalf of Neddy Smith and that, I wasn't going to kill anyone for Neddy Smith. He can kill his own people. I'll kill my own, he can kill his. But of which he never did. But
and of that sentence, you did 2.5 years or so in solitary. Is that
2.5 years? I did in solitary confinement. Mate, I tell you what, that's when the hair on the top of my head fell out, and it went white. Just through the stress of the place too. Like, you know, and I was under a lot of pressure too then with all the ICAC investigations and...
How do you fill your days? Like,
well, mate, all I did was meditate and train all day. I just, you know, do push-ups and walk around I had a cage at the back of me cell. I just walk around the cage, hour that way, come back in, do some push-ups, do some chin-ups, do some, you know.
For 2.5
that was
years.
it, shadow spar, you know, carry on. And then meditate or play the guitar.
That's mentally tough.
Yeah.
You've got to be tough.
Well, you'd have to
Yeah, you've got to go through a certain process because a lot of people neck themselves, I can tell you.
You'd spend a lot of time thinking about everything that's gone before, wouldn't you? Did you spend time thinking about your childhood and your dad and everything else? Or?
No. Look, I always put the past in the past, you know. And I always say to blokes when I see them, you know, some of my friends, and they go, oh, you know, I got sexually molested when I was a kid, you know, which is a horrible thing. And I said, well, you know, same thing happened to me, mate, but it happened yesterday. Get over it, move on, mate. You know, whatever you do in your life.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say that, and some people are as tough as you, but I found out later on in my life, because I've met some people who have also been through that stuff, and not everybody can handle it the way you can, mate.
No.
I just listen to your story now. You're a pretty amazing individual to have gone through that. But like I said, I was very much similar to you, Graham. I used to say to a lot of my friends, come on, you know, because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
But no, we've got to change. You've got to try to help those guys. And when they,
I understand that. But what I always say to them is, you're the master of your own mind. You're the only one who thinks within it. You know what I mean? So if you want to think on the things that happen here, then it's going to ruin you. If you want to think about horrible things, nothing good's ever going to come good, you know. What do you give out to get back? So got to keep your head in a different spot. You know, I mean, sometimes it's not always easy. Sometimes I wake up of a morning brooding about, you know, some of the people in my past, you know, when then I go, nope, it's got to go.
Yeah,
you know?
Some people can do it, some people can't. But
No,
you,
unfortunately they can't.
You know.
Do you have any regrets, Graham?
No, only stabbing the prosecutor, mate. No, I don't have any regrets at all about anything I've done in my life, mate. You know, I've wounded them, I've shot them, I've stabbed them. I did what I had to do in that life. I believe everyone's got a role in their life. I believe I was supposed to travel down the road I travelled down. And, you know, I had plenty of talents. I could sing, I could, you know.
His daughter's a great singer.
Yeah, it runs in the family.
Talented lady,
you know?
a young lady.
And I could box also, but I got lazy with the boxing, you know. I got lazy with it. I didn't have enough discipline in myself then, you know, to go on with it until I got with Neddy over at North Sydney and Wallaby Road.
I can guarantee you're making much more money than Neddy and you would have been boxing.
Oh, well, I knew that. And that's what I used to think. I used to think, mate, to get $49 for fighting 4 rounds at Marrickville RSL.
What do you reckon?
Well, I can jump over a counter and get 80,000.
What do you think you turned over in your criminal career?
Oh, well, mate, I know that me and Ned sat down one day just counting over the 10 years I knocked around with him. We would have turned over 100 million.
Wow.
And you've got to remember
where
out of that
where did it all end up?
But out of that 100 million, you've got to remember money's going into things that sometimes don't come off. Money's going to other members of the gang, like we had 10 in the gang. And, you know, you're slinging coppers, you're slinging magistrates, prosecutors.
And you've lived a great life, didn't you?
There were times where we had good times, of course.
Yeah, I
we had
remember
good times,
being a young boy growing up, hearing some
I loved the
crazy
bloke. We were the
stories.
best of mates until he turned on me, you know. But
how do you feel about him now? He's in prison for the rest of his life, and it doesn't seem that that's going to be very long. How will you feel when he passes away?
I won't feel any different, anything towards him. Look, I feel sorry for the bloke that he's sitting in there doing 2 life sentences. I mean, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, you know. And, you know, look, even though he was behind, you know, say 4 attempts on my life out of the 20 I've had on me, he was only behind him. He was never the one ever going to pull the trigger. I knew that through running around with him, because when it come down to the crunch of, shooting anyone, it was the gang that shot him, not him, you know. As I said, his job was to get the police fight. That's all his job was. A
lot of people would know your story through Blue Murder, the series. You're not particularly happy with the way that your character was portrayed in that, or the situation in itself. What are your complaints with it?
Oh, just everything.
Yeah.
Everything about it was just a lie. I mean, it was just it was supposed to be a documentary on the life and times of all that era. And, they got us sitting down there. I get pinched for these drugs in North Sydney that I was set up for. And they planted a gun on me, shot me in the head. And the pellets all went through my head. I still got one stuck in my eye. And only because of that awareness in me that I survived it. And the word was kill me on sight. But I forget exactly what the question was.
Blue murder. Well, yeah. What were your issues with the way that it was portrayed?
Yeah, all of that. So after that scene, in that blue murder, you see them sitting down, Ned and Roger sitting together, and Roger says, "Don't worry about it. We'll get another kilo from." We never got any drugs off the police.
Yeah, right.
Now Rogerson I've never paid Roger Rogerson $1 single in my entire life. I've never ever seen him take money. I know he took it off Ned, right? But I've never seen him. I actually offered him $10,000 one day in the toilets at the Stagecoach Hotel, a Stagecoach restaurant, to try and get him aside over something, and he said, "Stick it up your ass." He didn't want the money, and that was a true story. Now, it was the same thing that the whole of the ICAC was about, was corruption, and they kept pushing me. That's why they held me in solitary for so long.
Yeah, right.
Like hand over, tell us, you must have seen
Give
the
us
police
something.
get paid. I said, never seen them be paid in my life. They said, they just couldn't believe me. I said, they don't tell me. I said, Ned kept them to himself. He was jealous. Of course that was a lie. I was telling porkies. I was just protecting me gang, myself and the police. So
yeah. What's the main thing in the show that you're not happy with that said someone did something
the whole the scene, some of the scenes, the fights we had, the fights were true, but the fights were not portrayed in the right. When we fought all these bikies in the pub at the Broadway, they were the South Sydney footballers.
Right.
For a start, a poor little bloody Tugger Coleman and all them. It was a two-up game, and there was Buddy Kane and all them who played for West, and a big crew of them. When Buddy Kane shaped up behind Ned's back in the pub in the mirror, and Ned turned around, left hooked him, and it was on. So next one I realised there was too many of them, so I ran out and got the bat, the equaliser, and come back in and just started whacking them. So. So they all took off. So I remember Buddy Kane yelling out that night, "God's on my side." And I said, "Not tonight, son." Whack. And he went. We can look back now and laugh about it. But, some people probably think we've got a sick mind having a laugh about it. And that's the way things were, and people didn't run to the police. "Oh, I've just got assaulted," or, But look,
they weren't stupid. You're going to run to the police, and the police are going to come. And you're going to get belted again.
No, you can, or more, or worse.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So,
And
I think honestly, I do believe people knew back in that era that how dangerous it was to go and say Graham or Neddy done this or done that. You were committing suicide if you done it.
Yeah, it was pretty common knowledge on the street, though. Not to do the wrong thing. So, as I say, there was only two forces on the street, and that was, Lenny McPherson's gang. But that by the time we started to grow, they'd broken apart. The gambling days were over. The brothels had all been made legal. Casinos were all shutting down.
So, Graham, it went from like illegal gambling and stuff to drugs.
Straight into the drugs, the armed robberies, and each supported the other.
Are you okay with the fact that you were involved in the heroin trade in Australia? Is that?
No, I didn't ever really say that I could ever enjoyed it. But you got to understand this, that, it's demand and supply. If someone doesn't want something, we're not going to supply it. So if that's the thing of the day, which it was, then that's what we sold. That's where the money was. You could cut it 4 times. You could make a fortune out of it in those days. And it became easy. And today, there's so many people just doing it. Every town's got a crew that all sell it, because it's an easy way to earn a living.
Well, the demand now is the supply of ice. Would you, if you were around now? Would you?
I tell you now, if I had anything to do with, I was still involved in organised crime, anyone who sold ice in my crew would be dealt with severely.
And why is that?
Well, because I've seen the devastation of it. You know, I mean, look, when I look back on the heroin users that just, you know, they'd not off in the corner and they'd just go in their own dream world. You know, where you got these kids that are on this stuff today and they're grinding their teeth and they're angry. They've got 3 times their normal strength. You know, when they're full of it, it's a bad drug, mate. I've seen blokes.
For me,
they've bashed their
it
mothers.
was heroin. And I've known people who've done heroin and cocaine, have robbed their family, and left them with nothing. So I don't know. I'm one of those real anti-drug guys, and I mean, look, you know,
I don't blame you, and I would be too. But you know, I lived a different life, Jeff. You know, and I couldn't turn around in my gang and say,
I know.
Even though I didn't like doing it, I'm not going to sell that.
Yeah.
Because I would have had a hole in the back of my head that afternoon. You know what I mean? So, whatever was the go was the go. There were some things that I'd pull out of. You know, look, especially with Ned. Ned was insanely jealous of blokes. If they were earning big money, he'd make up some excuse why they had to get shot. I used to ring up the people, you know, and say, when you're coming in, bring your family tonight. You know what I mean? So I'd protect them.
Yeah.
You know, because he'd want to shoot them, he'd make up stories about them just to take their money off them. And, you know, that's the way he was, you know. He was just, I don't know what I was with him. And yet the bloke had so much charisma, you know. He was great company. He was, you know, he had everything going for him, and yet he just had this little rotten, treacherous side to his nature, which was a real pity.
Were you surprised when Roger Rogerson found himself back in strife again most recently, and now is back inside, given his past and, you know, how old he was? Or is it just in his nature, do you think?
It's a hard question.
That's an easy question, mate. Just answer.
Mate, look, in all honesty, you know, once he was a policeman, he could do what he liked. You know, once he came out of that force, he still thought he could do what he liked. Look, Roger was this way. Roger looked after Roger. Roger worked for the police, against the police. He's given information on the side. Letters have been handed up of comfort on behalf of him that no one even knows about. Everyone thinks he was as solid as a rock copper that never hurt anyone, wouldn't roll on anyone. He gave up coppers for murders, you know.
He set him up, I hear.
Yeah, he set them all up. Met them in Berrimah prison, found out where they were buried, took the police to where they were buried. He's done all sorts of tricks. He's worked for the Crims, against the Crims. He's always run around with people. He'd be pretending he's friends, you know. I know that, you know, young John up across, you know, he likes him. You know, he'll get up there, he'd just be sucking his brain, trust me. That's what he does. He's good at it. And that information need be used and somewhere along the line to feather his own nest, somewhere along the line. That's how he operated. So I wasn't really surprised at all when he got caught. But what I was surprised about, that here he was running around with this known police informer that McNamara, who'd already rolled on all the police up King's Cross, had given up that many police over the years, and here he was running around with them and they're planning this sort of a deal, you know. I mean, I don't really think that's the truth behind it. I think there's more behind it. I think the whole thing was a whole planned.
We should get the police force to employ you, my boy.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines,
I'm pretty sure I know the full truth to it.
well, along those lines, you're under a fair degree of protection given what's happened with the ICAC. Is there anything that people don't know that people perhaps should, that you do, that you're allowed to say now?
Oh, well, anything I have said, I've said in my book that, you know, I did certain robberies. I was able to get away with certain robberies. Of course, I've never nodded my head to everything I've done. The only reason that I even mentioned anything like that in the ICAC was to protect all my gang and myself. And remember, this was a police corruption inquiry. It had nothing to do with criminals. But they said, you've got to nominate criminals. I said, all right, I did them with Christopher Dale Flannery and Laurie Johnson. He said,
they're dead.
But they're both dead. I went, that's what happens in their life.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Where Ned went the other way and went, well, he did that. Well, when they wouldn't give him any time off, then he went to the National Crime Authority, then he rolled on Roger, he rolled on some of his best friends over murders.
Yeah.
You That's what he did. They still wouldn't let him out.
Do you know who killed Christopher Dale Flannery?
No.
Ben
No idea.
Damon.
You can always tell when it's you can always tell when it wasn't a big crew. Because it's very quiet. All right. So, I mean, I had, as I said at the inquiry into his death, I said, look, he had more enemies than a snake. You know what I mean? He tried to kill me, so I had a good enough reason to put one in him myself. But the same as I did with Ned, and I tried to get Ned, and the police saved him. And I wrote about that in my book. I waited for him at the Three Weeds Hotel. I laid down in the garden opposite. I knew he'd walk out, hop into the passenger side seat, and his girlfriend would drive the car. I said, he's got to go because they've been trying to knock me, so it's time to square up. So I laid down and waited for him, heard him walk out, looked across the road. I laid down in the garden, the gun on my chest, someone waiting down the road for me. The door opened. I was just about to sit up, and next minute the bull wagon pulled up on the corner, about 20 feet away from me, and they yelled out, "Hey, Ned, you going to the new club down the street?" It just opened up in Balmain near the old Cricketers Arms Hotel, which is now the Monkey Bar. I said, "Oh, Jesus." I just rolled over because I just
everything happens for a reason.
that's right. That's exactly right. So I rolled over.
It's a blessing
and just,
for you.
So it didn't occur. So,
Are you glad that, in hindsight, are you glad that you didn't go through, or you weren't able to go through with that, or?
It's debatable.
50-50. How many people have you shot?
I wounded a few.
Your book, we should give a plug to. I think you can still buy it online. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can buy it online, but I've just finished. What I've done, I've made the old one and I've added some new chapters to it.
Yep.
And the cover's all been changed. It's called The Last Man Standing. The reason I am still in the process of writing one because a bloke wanted to do a big movie on me. And that's still in progress, except all this COVID has shut everything down over in Western Australia, the main people behind all this. So I've had to, everything's been on hold up until then. But yes, it's certainly been a most exciting life. And would I change it? When I look back, just some certain elements of it, as I say, that stabbing of the prosecutor. But look, I lived the life, I enjoyed the life. People ask me all the time, do you miss the life? You bet I think I do.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the streets these days? You touched on it before, but what do you think the big difference is?
Mate, just that whole organisational skill. That like blokes in my day were all, you had to have one bloke who was a genius at breaking combinations.
So Graham, if your crew were around today and what's happening in the world today was happening, what?
Well, we'd have a bigger crew for a start because you'd have to have a big crew today because, the people that run around today and gangs, they've got big numbers. And nowadays we didn't need them because we had such strong help from law enforcement and every bit of help that you needed in the, if you got into trouble for drink driving or something, we'd go and front the prosecutor who was fronting and just say, look, he's been pinched on it 3 times before, but wipe that clean, will you? This is his first offence. So, it'd cost you X amount and we'd give him half and we'd keep half and that's how we survived, So we looked after everyone and, so everyone always came to us and that's how we survived. Like people coming to us, bringing us stuff. What about this job? There's a job here, there's a job there,
Yeah.
So, well, we lived off that network. But in saying, today it'd be too much, especially the days when they're all running around spraying up everyone's house, which was the most ridiculous thing that ever happened in this country. And that was probably the worst I've ever seen this state. I mean, thank God it's all been shut down and they've closed it all down now. But, it started, with ethnic groups, not Australians. So that was a no-go. Your home was your safe zone. You know what I mean? You weren't to come into that person's home or pop them if they had kids, or if they didn't have kids, well, it was a different ball game. You know what I mean? But, you'd wait for them to put the bin out and throw them in the bin and wheel them away. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's how it happened in those days. These days they just drive past your house and spray it up and carry on like lunatics, and, they'll end up killing little kids. And, so thank God it's been pulled to a stop, because it was I thought it was a cowardly act. Just drive-bys. I thought they were ridiculous. That's what the Americans did, and that's what unfortunately is the go. When we were younger blokes and sharpies and all that Mark Burris was talking about.
And Joe Molinari.
Yeah, like we were all sharpies. So in those days we followed the English, because that's where we originated all from, most of us. And, today they all follow the Yanks. So now they've all got this silly gang culture and this strut and this
colours
and the hats.
Yeah.
And let's spin the hat this way and walk like this and have this colour, flag hanging off us. And, they give themselves away who they are. I mean, I don't know, I think they're pretty ordinary today.
It's not smarter.
No, that's not clever.
You were smart guys.
Well, you had to do a lot of thinking. You planned everything like a commando. That's what we did. You planned everything. Look, I'm not saying there's blokes today that aren't clever at what they do. They are. It's just today the poor blokes are under a lot of pressure. They've got cameras everywhere. They've got, these security screens. They've got all of these
some
things
today.
Security
screens. We've got some great ones.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But there's...
What are the best ones, Paul?
Amplimesh.
Amplimesh, of course.
Yeah, they're pretty safe at home if you've got that on the front door, mate.
Mate,
I'm just getting it done.
They're
in my
all
house
over
now.
my home. They won't come into mine. If they do, they'll get a terrible shock.
We've put the Amplimesh on yours to keep you in, Graham. We've put the Amplimesh on yours to keep you in, so you can't get out, mate. We've fooled you, mate. On that note, Graham, mate, so great to have you here with us. So great to listen to your stories.
Pleasure,
Thank you
mate.
so much.
Yeah,
No worries, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Thoroughly
mate.
enjoyed it.
We appreciate
On
it.
your boys.
Don't forget to subscribe, Standing 8, YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify.